Smoke hangs heavy in the air. A bitter haze rises from burning naphtha pots and smouldering timbers, stinging the eyes and throat. The thunder of horse hooves echoes against stone walls, mixing with the low, anxious whinny of animals left without grain. Shouted orders cut through the chaos, barked in a foreign tongue, followed by the sharp, unmistakable crack of whips. Then the scene opens fully. Hundreds of women are driven into the open square. Their veils are torn away. Their faces stray with ash, sweat, and tears. Slender figures, some barely more than girls, stagger forward as rough hands grab, shove, and sort them like livestock. One soldier yanks a young woman by the arm, dragging her toward a line of tents. She stumbles, her cry swallowed by the noise around her. Nearby, another group is separated out. The daughters of nobles and wealthy families set aside deliberately. Their fate is not random, it is assigned. The conquerors laugh openly. Their eyes shine with expectation, with entitlement to them. This is victory made tangible. But this moment is only the beginning. What follows exposes the true horror, not a sudden outburst of violence, but a calculated system. A store, designed to break societies and recycle human lives into fuel for conquest. What you are about to hear involves enslavement and sexual violence against women and civilians. These events are preserved in historical records, but they are deeply disturbing. If you need to step away, that's understandable. For those who stay, the goal here is not to exploit suffering, but to understand the machina behind it. How terror itself became a tool of empire. This was not mindless barbarism. It was a system, a machine of empire building, oiled with fear and powered by human beings treated as currency. In the spring of 1220, as Mongol armies poured into Central Asia, the city of Bukhara, one of the great jewels of the Silk Road, became the proving ground for this machine. Genghis Khan, the self-proclaimed scourge of God, did not merely conquer cities. He dismantled them, repurposing survivors into instruments for future wars. His sons carried out these orders with cold efficiency, ensuring that every victory strengthened the next. The target was the Khwarazmian Empire, ruled by Shah Muhammad, a realm that had invited disaster through arrogance and betrayal. What happened in Bukhara mattered because it set a template, one that would be repeated across continents for decades. Cultures erased, populations shattered, and in their place, the largest land empire the world had ever known. Its echo still lingers today in how power treats people as expendable assets. Long before flames licked Bukhara's walls, the roots of this destruction spread across the Mongolian steppe. Genghis Khan was born Temujin, around 1162, into a brutal world of feuding nomadic clans. When his father was poisoned by rivals, Temujin was still a boy. His family was abandoned. He survived hunger, exile, and enslavement. Learning early that mercy was a luxury, through relentless will, strategic marriages, and ruthless alliances, he rose. By 1206, he had united the Mongol tribes under one banner and taken the title Genghis Khan, universal ruler. His system was deceptively simple: loyalty over lineage, merit over birth, rewards shared from plunder, and terror used deliberately, not randomly, to break enemies before battles even began. His army, perhaps 100,000 strong, moved with terrifying speed. Mounted archers fired composite bows that outranged anything their enemies possessed. They lived off the land, crossed impossible terrain, and struck where no one expected them. The collision with the Khwarazmian Empire began as a diplomatic dispute and spiraled into catastrophe. This empire stretched from the Caspian Sea to the Indus River, wealthy from trade, layered with Persian, Turkic, and Arab traditions. Shah Muhammad, in his 40 Seconds music and deeply proud, dismissed the Mongols as univilized raiders. In 1218, a Mongol trade caravan of around 450 merchants arrived at Otrar, a border city. They came openly seeking commerce. The governor, Inalshuk, Shah Muhammad's own uncle, accused them of espionage. Their goods were seized. Every merchant was executed. Genghis Khan sent envoys demanding justice. Shah Muhammad responded by beheading one and shaving the beards of the others, sending them back in humiliation. It was a fatal music mistake. Genghis Khan valued diplomacy as a weapon. To insult it was to choose annihilation. They have chosen war, he declared. What followed ranks among the deadliest invasions in history. Estimates vary wildly. Some historians' music suggest 1.5 million dead, others as many as 15 million. The exact number may never be known, but the devastation music is not in doubt. Genghis divided his forces into wings. He took the central route with his youngest son, Tui. Still in his 20s, Tui was already known for ruthless efficiency and logistical brilliance. He mastered siege warfare quickly, adapting tactics with chilling speed. The Mongols' music crossed deserts and mountains thought impassable, enduring blizzards, thirst, and starvation. Contemporary observers were stunned. Ned Otra fell after a 5-month siege. Inelchuk was executed brutally. Molten silver poured into his eyes and ears, a symbolic punishment for greed. The city was destroyed, its people were slaughtered or enslaved. This became the rule: resist and be erased, submit and be exploited. Shah Muhammad fled west, abandoning his empire. His mother, Turkin Khatun, attempted to rally defences as Mongol foe. RCEs split apart. Genghis and Tului pushed toward the heartland. And there, waiting like a prize, stood Bukhara. Over 1,500 years old, Bukhara was a center of Islamic scholarship and commerce. Its skyline was marked by towering minarets. Its bazaars buzzed with traders. Its libraries held centuries of accumulated knowledge. Perhaps 300,000 people lived within its walls: merchants, scholars, baptisman families. But tensions simmered. Shah Muhammad had previously sacked the city, leaving deep resentment among its people. In early 1220, Genghis Khan executed one of his most daring maneuvers. He led his army across the Kizilkum Desert, a wasteland believed impossible for large forces. Mongol scouts had secretly mapped hidden wells. When the horde emerged at Bukhar's gates, it was as if they had materialized from the void. The city's garrison, around 20,000 strong under a Turkish general named Kukan, rode out to confront them. Mongol archers ambushed the force, slaughtering thousands. The survivors fled back behind the walls, dragging fear with them. For 3 days, the Mongols encircled the city. Their tents stretched to the horizon. Catapults hurled stones. Arrows blackened the sky. Panic spread. Kukan urged resistance, but the people, exhausted by misrule, made a desperate choice. On February 10, 1220, Bukhara opened its gates. Genghis Khan rode in, Tui at his side. The outer city submitted, but Kukan and a few hundred soldiers barricaded themselves inside the citadel with their families. What followed revealed the system in full operation. Civilians were driven forward to fill mows and scale walls used as living tools. Defenders were forced to kill their own. Naphtha pots ignited rooftops. Fire consumed wooden homes. After 12 days, the citadel fell. Kukan fought to the end. His men were overwhelmed. No male taller than a whip's butt was spared. Tens of thousands died. Though medieval chronicles may exaggerate, the scale of slaughter is unquestionable. And among the survivors was a young woman named Zara. Zara was the daughter of a silk merchant, born into comfort and quiet expectations. Her father traded fine fabrics from China and Persia, and her childhood unfolded among shaded courtyards, poetry recitations, and carefully tended gardens. She had been promised to a young scholar, a future imagined in lectures and family gatherings, not in fear. War was something distant, discussed in whispers, never expected to burst through the door. When the Mongols breached Bukhara, that illusion vanished in an instant. Soldiers dragged her family from their home. Her father was torn away with the other able-bodied men, bound and marched, off toward an unknown fate. Zara never saw him again. In the open square, the population was sorted with methodical precision. Artisans were separated first. Music smiths, carpenters, weavers, marked for deportation east, where their skills would serve the empire. Strong young men were pulled aside and levied into auxiliary units destined to march ahead of the army as expendable manpower. Then came the rest: women, children, the elderly. Genghis Khan ordered the survivors assembled in open fields beyond the city. He and Tui personally oversaw the distribution. This was not chaos. It was accounting. Plunder, gold, goods, and people was divided by rank. Humans were tallied like livestock. The chronicles described the chosen women as slender as cypress trees, a phrase that marked youth and desirability. Many were raped immediately, a deliberate act meant to reward soldiers, music, and shatter resistance. Other were assigned as concubines, servants, or slaves, their value determined by rank and need. Zara was among those driven into guarded lines, her cries swallowed by the mass around her. She was assigned to Toloi's camp, her life reduced to an entry in the ledger of conquest. Her body was no longer her own, it was currency. This was not about individual cruelty alone, it was incentive. Music sold. Ears who followed orders were rewarded. Loyalty was bound not just by fear, but by access to spoils, land, wealth, and women. Violence became institutional, regulated, repeatable. While the people were being divided, Bukhara itself was stripped bare. Mongol troops moved street by street, rooting out anyone hiding. Entire quarters were torched. Flames raced across wooden roofs, collapsing homes in hours of sparks. The great library vanished into smoke, centuries of knowledge reduced to ash. Only stone structures, minarets, and walls remained standing amid the ruins. Genghis Khan entered the Friday mosque, reportedly mistaking it for a palace. He ordered horses fed from chests that once held Qurans. Wine was poured, singing. Girls were forced to perform. From the pulpit, he addressed the Sioux. Revivers, O people, he thundered, know that you have committed great sins. I am the punishment of God. It was psychological warfare, conquest framed as divine judgment, resistance recast as heresy. The message was clear. Submission was not just survival, it was repentance. Bukhara's fall sent shockwaves through the Khwarazmian Empire. Shah Muhammad, already in flight, heard the news and music days paired. Cities collapsed without a fight. As word spread, the Mongols spared those who surrendered quickly and annihilated those who resisted. Tui rejoined his father as they moved toward Samarkand, where similar horrors would unfold. For a brief moment, Bukhara breathed. Among the ruins, a scholar was said to whisper to another, "It is the wind of God's omnipotence." An irony hung in the air. The invaders desecrating mosques unknowingly echoed Islamic fatalism to justify their violence. The machine was scaling up. From Bukhara, Mongol forces fanned outward. Genghis dispatched music detachments to hunt Shah Muhammad across deserts and rivers. The Shah would eventually die, broken and isolated on an island in the Caspian Sea. His empire fractured behind him. Tului took the southern route. CI. Ties like MV and Nishapur suffered even worse fates. Chronicles claim hundreds of thousands slaughtered. Figures debated but reinforced by layers of destruction uncovered centuries later. Pyramids of skulls were erected as warnings. Women were sorted again, violated, enslaved or killed if deemed burdensome. From the perspective of the Mongol command, this was necessity. Rewards kept the army cohesive. Terror reduced the need for prolonged sieges. One captured Persian scribe recorded the process in chilling detail. Reports flowed up the chain. Distributions flowed down. There was no disorder, no hesitation. Bureaucracy fully operational. In the wake of Bukhara, villages emptied. Entire populations were funneled into labor pools. Families vanished from the record. Lineages ended in a single afternoon. Numbers alone cannot convey it. But the silence left behind tells its own story. And yet, music amid the destruction. There were strange contradictions. Enslaved artisans sent east carried Bukhara's skills with them. Potters shaped clay and distant Karakoram using techniques music born in a city now in ruins. Silk patterns from lost homes reappeared thousands of miles away. Culture, Sioux, revived, fractured, and displaced. The escalation reached a grim peak in cities like Herat. Their initial surrender was revoked after a rebellion, triggering total extermination. Women who might once have been spared for labor were slaughtered en masse. Utility gave way to vengeance. Zara, now part of Tui's baggage train, witnessed the system from within. Marched towards Samarkand, she watched Konska. Iptid men driven ahead of the army, thrown against walls first, their bodies absorbing arrows meant for Mongol soldiers. The women were music guarded closely, not out of mercy, but because they were valuable assets. They cooked, mended clothing, tended fires, warmed beds. Some resisted. They were killed without hesitation. Others adapted. Some bore children with Mongol fathers, binding bloodline to the empire. The system encouraged this. Warriors gained status through offspring. Conquest was reinforced through reproduction. Empire expanded not just through land but through people. But cracks began to show. Shah Muhammad's son, Jalal ad-Din, rallied music remnants of the Khwarazmian forces. He avoided open battle, striking supply lines and rear units in sudden guerrilla attacks. His defier NCE proved something dangerous, that the machine could be slowed. That terror was not absolute. The climax came at urgent, the Khwarazmian capital. Months of siege turned the city into hell. Street by street fighting, houses burned from within. Rivers were diverted to flood entire districts. Defenders were boiled alive. Civilians drowned as water surged through streets. Tolui directed the assault. Refining tactics first tested at Bukhara. When urgent finally fell, chronicles claimed up to 1.2 million dead. Historians argue the number but agree on the outcome. Near total annihilation. Bodies choked the Amu-Darya River. The machine had reached its breaking point. Among the enslaved, Zara saw the flaw. Endless conquest bred endless enemies. Genghis Khan sensed it too. Not through defeat, but through exhaustion. Forces were recalled. The campaign slowed. The machine did not collapse, but it cracked. In the aftermath, Bukhara was little more than a scar on the land. Its streets lay choked with ash and rubble. The population that had once filled its markets and madrasas was gone, dead, scattered, or enslaved. Genghis Khan did not linger. He left governors behind to extract tribute and order, then moved on, the machine already turning toward new targets. Tui returned east with his share of the spoils. Among them were captives like Zara, human proof of victory that elevated his status within the ruling family. In time he would father sons who became great khans themselves, bloodlines, forged directly through conquest. The system sustained itself not just through fear, but thought of inheritance. The Khwarazmian Empire dissolved completely. Shah Muhammad's mother Turkan Khatun was captured, paraded as a symbol of defeat and exiled to Mongolia. Whatever authority she once wielded evaporated in humiliation. Survivors scattered across Central Asia, some eventually returning to Bukhara under Mongol oversight. Against all expectations, the city revived. Within decades, Bukhara became a major hub, again integrated into what historians later called music, the Pax Mongolica. Trade flourished under Mongol protection. Merchants traveled safely from China to the Mediterranean. The city was repopulated in part by deportees from other regions. Chinese craftsmen, Persian administrators, Turk laborers, reshaping its identity. Bukhara lived, but it was no longer the same city. It carried scars in its foundations. The broader cost was staggering. Central Asia's population may have dropped from around 25 million to under 10 million. Entire regions were emptied. Agricultural systems collapsed. Irrigation canals fell into disrepair. The land itself bore the imprint of conquest. And yet, history preserved its irony. Documents originally intended to glorify Shah Muhammad instead condemned him. Mongol administrators carefully archived records of his failures, using them as cautionary examples of arrogance and misrule. His name served not as a hero's but as a warning. Centuries later, the ground itself would speak. In the 2020s, archaeologists working in Bukhara uncovered layers of destruction dating precisely to the Mongol invasion. Charred beams, arrowheads embedded in collapsed walls, mass graves filled hastily, bodies stacked without ceremony. Teams affiliated with institutions like NYU's Institute for the Study of the Ancient World documented signs of sudden catastrophe rather than gradual decline. One discovery in 2024 stood out. a sealed underground chamber containing manuscripts hidden in desperation as the city fell. Faded ink, burned edges, fragments of a library thought completely lost. Proof that knowledge had been buried, not entirely erased. Skeletons told their own stories, blade marks on ribs and SK. Ulls, bound wrists on female remains. Silent testimony to enslavement. These findings challenged claims that medieval chroniclers exaggerated the violence. The ground confirmed what the text described. This is why Bukhara matters, not because it was unique, but because it was typical. It shows how systems of power dehumanize, how people become units, incentives, tools. The Mongol machine was brutal, sleek efficient. Terror reduced resistance. Exploitation fueled expansion. Bureaucracy replaced chaos. It worked, but at a cost that cannot be measured only in numbers. Zara's fate is unknown. The records do not follow her beyond the campaigns. Perhaps she survived. Many captives did. Perhaps she adapted, endured, and lived long enough to whisper her story to children born into a world reshaped by company. Enquest. Perhaps her name was lost. But her experience was not unique. She was meant to disappear. They all were. Yet memory has a way of surviving systems designed to erase it. Stories persist in ruins, in bones, in fragments of pottery, in half-burned manuscripts sealed underground. Empires rise, grind forward, and collapse. But the people they tried to turn into fuel leave echoes behind. The Mongol machine eventually slowed, not because it was defeated outright, but because it reached the limits of human endurance. Overextension bred resistance. Jalal-ad-Din's defiance showed that terror could be challenged. Others would follow. No system is invincible forever. Bukhara rose again. Its walls were rebuilt. Its markets reopened. Life returned, altered, but unbroken. The city that was supposed to vanish endured. And now, centuries later, its story reaches you. Because you chose to listen. If this story stayed with you, share in the comments which part haunts you the most. Subscribe for more hidden histories that deserve to be remembered, and when the silence returns, remember this: machinists of power may grind people down, but stories outlast empires. Bukhara's fall shows that empire is not just drawn on maps, it is carved into human lives. Genghis Khan's conquest of the Khwarazmian Empire was not random savagery, but an organized machine that turned fear into policy, people into assets, and cities into fuel for the next campaign. In that system, someone like Zara was never meant to be remembered. She was supposed to vanish into the margins of plunder, one line in an unwritten ledger that balanced victory against lives destroyed. Yet the machine did not have the last word. Ruins, bones, and buried manuscripts speak where chronicles are silent. Bukhara was burned, emptied, and rebuilt, its culture shattered and remade under foreign rule. But it did not disappear. The empire that tried to erase it is gone. The stories of those it sought to consume, Zara, the artisans, the scholars, the nameless women in the square, remain as echoes in the historical record and in the ground itself. That is the real legacy of Bukhara's conquest, a warning about what happens when power reduces people to numbers, rewards violence as policy, and calls terror necessary. Machines of domination always reach their limit. What endures, long after banners fall and rulers are forgotten, are the scars they leave, and the stories we choose to tell about them.